So this is January 6th. These are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a pardon. Yes. Full pardon.
Just hours after taking office, Donald Trump issued a sweeping clemency order for those who took part in the January 6 Capitol riots in 2021. It was a highly anticipated announcement among the president's supporters, a small group even gathering outside a prison in Washington, D.C. to see some of those convicted walk free.
I love my country. I love my God. And I love these men and women in here, and I want to see them free.
They exemplify freedom. They were politically prosecuted for their beliefs. They were prosecuted by a corrupt Justice Department.
The pardons effectively wipe away legal consequences for all but 14 of the nearly 1,590 people charged over the riot.
Okay, so what I'm about to tell you should make every American sit up and pay attention, because what Donald Trump just did with his pardon power is exactly what the founders of this country were terrified would happen someday. Trump has now granted blanket clemency to nearly 1,600 people who were charged in connection with the January 6th Capitol attack. 1,600 people, the largest criminal prosecution effort in Justice Department history, wiped away with the stroke of a pen. People who assaulted police officers, people who smashed windows and broke into the Capitol building, people who were part of a violent mob that tried to stop the peaceful transfer of power. All of them pardoned. All of them set free. All of them told by the President of the United States that what they did was okay, that there will be no consequences, that you can attack American democracy, and as long as you did it for Trump, you get a get-out-of-jail-free card. And now, Congress is responding. Impeachment papers are rushing in. Lawmakers and constitutional scholars are saying this is not just bad policy, this is an abuse of power. This is exactly the kind of conduct that warrants removal from office. And the fight over whether Trump crossed a constitutional red line is exploding right now on Capitol Hill. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
So earlier, sitting behind his desk in the Oval Office, the president declared a national emergency on the US-Mexico border, designated drug cartels as terrorist organizations, and withdrew the US from the World Health Organization. The president has also pardoned more than 1,500 of his supporters who stormed the US Capitol 4 years ago when they tried to overturn his election defeat. The senior Democrat Nancy Pelosi has called the decision shameful. In his earlier inauguration speech, Donald Trump said he'd been saved by God to make America great again, and that a tide of change was sweeping the country.
But wait, it gets worse. Because the January 6th pardons were just the beginning. Trump followed that up with high-profile pardons for his closest allies, the people who were at the center of the effort to overturn the 2020 election. Rudy Giuliani, pardoned. Mark Meadows, pardoned. John Eastman, the lawyer who wrote the legal memo arguing that Mike Pence could just reject electoral votes, pardoned. Sidney Powell, who spread wild conspiracy theories about voting machines, pardoned. These are not random people who got caught up in the chaos of January 6th. These are Trump's inner circle. These are the architects of the scheme to keep Trump in power after he lost the election. And now they have all been pardoned. They will face no consequences for what they did. They will never have to answer for their role in trying to subvert American democracy because Trump used his pardon power to protect them. Come on, are you kidding me right now? This is exactly what the founders were worried about when they debated whether to give the president pardon power in the first place. They had lengthy discussions about what would happen if a corrupt president used pardons to protect his own allies. What would happen if a president committed crimes and then just pardoned everyone who helped him? They knew this was a danger. They warned about it. And now we are living through it. Trump has turned the pardon power, which is supposed to be about mercy and correcting injustices, into a weapon for protecting people who committed crimes on his behalf. He has created a system where loyalty to Trump is rewarded with immunity from prosecution, where you can break any law you want, as long as you did it for the right team. That is not justice. That is corruption. That is an abuse of power so blatant that it would make a banana republic dictator blush. And the response from Congress is finally catching up to the outrage. Groups like Free Speech for People have released model impeachment articles that specifically list abusing the pardon power as an impeachable offense. They have gathered over 500,000 signatures from Americans demanding that Congress act. Res. 353, the sweeping impeachment resolution we have talked about on this channel, accuses Trump of high crimes, including obstructing justice and corruptly using official authority. And legal scholars are pointing to these mass pardons as prime examples of exactly that kind of abuse. The argument is simple. The pardon power exists for legitimate purposes. It does not exist so the president can protect his co-conspirators. It does not exist so the president can erase crimes that were committed to help him. When you use pardons that way, when you turn clemency into a cover-up, you have crossed a line that the Constitution does not allow, and you have committed an impeachable offense. This is wild. This is absolutely wild. We are watching a president openly use his constitutional powers to shield an attack on democracy from any accountability whatsoever, and the question now is whether Congress has the courage to do anything about it, whether lawmakers will actually hold Trump accountable for this abuse, or whether they will just shrug and let him get away with it, sending a message to every future president that you can pardon your way out of anything. All right, so let me take you deeper into this because understanding the scope of what Trump has done with these pardons is really important. This is not just about a few controversial clemency decisions. This is about a systematic use of presidential power to erase accountability for an assault on American democracy. And when you see all the pieces together, when you understand what these pardons actually mean, it becomes clear why so many people are saying this crosses a constitutional line that cannot be ignored. Let me walk you through exactly what happened and why it matters so much. Let me start with the January 6th pardons because the scale here is genuinely staggering. On January 20th, 2025, the day Trump was inaugurated for his second term, he granted blanket clemency to nearly 1,600 people who had been charged in connection with the Capitol attack. This was not a careful review of individual cases. This was not Trump looking at specific defendants and deciding they had been treated unfairly. This was a mass pardon, a sweeping act of clemency that wiped away the entire Justice Department prosecution effort in one stroke. Years of work by federal prosecutors, thousands of hours of investigation, hundreds of guilty pleas and convictions. All of it, gone. Every single person who participated in the January 6th attack is now free from federal consequences. The people who beat police officers with flagpoles, pardoned. The people who sprayed bear mace at Capitol Police, pardoned. The people who broke windows and ransacked offices, pardoned. The people who built gallows outside the Capitol and chanted about hanging Mike Pence, pardoned, every single one of them. And here is what really gets me about this. These were not political prisoners. These were not people who were unfairly targeted by an overzealous prosecution. These were people who participated in a violent attack on the United States Capitol while Congress was certifying a presidential election. We all watched it happen on live television. We saw the violence, we saw the chaos, we saw police officers being overwhelmed and beaten. We saw lawmakers hiding under desks and being evacuated through tunnels. This was one of the darkest days in American history. And Trump just told everyone who participated, you did nothing wrong. In fact, you are heroes. You deserve to be celebrated, not punished. That is the message these pardons send. That attacking the Capitol is fine as long as you are doing it for Trump. That violence in service of keeping Trump in power is not a crime. It is patriotism. But the January 6th mass pardons were just the first wave. In November 2025, Trump followed up with high-profile pardons for his closest allies who were involved in the effort to overturn the 2020 election. And this is where the abuse of power becomes even more obvious. Because these are not random people who got swept up in the events of that day. These are the architects. These are the masterminds. These are the people who planned and executed the scheme to keep Trump in power after he lost. Rudy Giuliani was Trump's personal lawyer and the public face of the effort to challenge the election results. He spread lies about voter fraud. He pressured state officials to overturn results. He was a central figure in the entire operation, and now he has been pardoned for his role in it. Mark Meadows was Trump's White House chief of staff. He was in the room for the key meetings. He was involved in the pressure campaigns against state officials in the Justice Department. He was facing serious criminal exposure, and now he has been pardoned. John Eastman wrote the legal memo that laid out the theory for how Mike Pence could just refuse to certify the electoral votes. That memo was the intellectual foundation for the entire scheme. And now Eastman has been pardoned too. Think about what this means. The people who tried to overturn a presidential election, the people who came closest to ending American democracy as we know it, will face no legal consequences for what they did. They will never go to trial. They will never have to defend their actions in court. They will never face the possibility of prison time because the president, the same president they were trying to keep in power, used his pardon authority to protect them. This is not clemency. This is a cover-up. This is using the pardon power to ensure that the full truth about January 6th and the election subversion scheme never comes out in a courtroom. This is obstruction of justice on a massive scale, and Trump is doing it right out in the open because he thinks nobody can stop him. And the founders knew this could happen. They actually debated this exact scenario when they were writing the Constitution. There were delegates at the Constitutional Convention who warned that giving the president pardon power was dangerous because a corrupt president could use it to protect his own allies. George Mason, one of the founders who refused to sign the Constitution, specifically warned that the president might use pardons to stop prosecution of crimes that he himself was involved in. He said the president might pardon crimes which were advised by himself. That is almost exactly what Trump has done. He was involved in the effort to overturn the election. He was at the center of it, and now he has pardoned everyone who helped him. The founders saw this coming 250 years ago. They warned about it, and now it is actually happening. The impeachment response to these pardons has been building for months. Groups like Free Speech for People released model articles of impeachment back in May 2025 that specifically include abusing the pardon power as one of the charges. They argue that using pardons to protect allies who committed crimes on the president's behalf is exactly the kind of corrupt conduct that warrants impeachment. And they are not alone. Legal scholars across the political spectrum have been raising alarms about Trump's use of clemency. They point out that the pardon power, like all presidential powers, it is not unlimited. It cannot be used for corrupt purposes. It cannot be used to obstruct justice. It cannot be used to reward people for criminal conduct that benefited the president. When it is used that way, it becomes an impeachable abuse of power. HRES 353, the comprehensive impeachment resolution we have talked about on this channel, includes charges that fit this pattern exactly. It accuses Trump of obstructing justice. It accuses him of corruptly using official authority. It accuses him of a scheme to corrupt the legal system. And the January 6th pardons and the pardons for election subversion allies are prime examples of all of those charges. When you pardon people who committed crimes to help you stay in power, that is obstruction of justice. When you use your official authority to protect your co-conspirators, that is corrupt use of power. When you create a system where crimes committed for Trump result in immunity, that is corrupting the legal system itself. These pardons are not just controversial policy decisions. They are evidence of impeachable conduct. And that is why the impeachment push is gaining momentum. The public response has been significant too. The Impeach Trump Again campaign reports that over 500,000 Americans have signed petitions demanding that Congress act. Other groups have gathered even more signatures. There is a genuine grassroots movement of people who believe that what Trump has done with these pardons crosses a line that cannot be tolerated, and they are putting pressure on their representatives to do something about it. This is not just Washington insiders debating constitutional theory. This is ordinary Americans looking at what Trump has done and saying, this is wrong. This cannot stand. Someone has to hold him accountable. All right, so let me break this down into what it actually means and why you should care about it, because this is not just about pardons. This is about whether there are any limits on presidential power. This is about whether a president can commit crimes and then just pardon his way out of accountability. And this is about what kind of precedent we are setting for every future president who might be tempted to abuse their authority. Let me give you the key takeaways from everything we have covered. Point number one, Trump has turned the pardon power into a tool for obstruction. The pardon power exists for legitimate purposes. It is supposed to be about mercy, giving people a second chance when the justice system has been too harsh. It is supposed to be about correcting injustices, freeing people who were wrongly convicted or punished disproportionately. It is supposed to be about the national interest. Sometimes pardons are given for diplomatic reasons or to help the country move forward after a crisis. What it is not supposed to be is a tool for the president to protect his own allies from facing consequences for crimes they committed to benefit him. That is not mercy. That is not justice. That is corruption. And that is exactly what Trump has done. He has taken a constitutional power that was meant for noble purposes and perverted it into a weapon for shielding himself and his co-conspirators from accountability. The January 6th defendants were prosecuted for attacking the Capitol to keep Trump in power. The election subversion allies were charged for trying to overturn an election to keep Trump in power, and Trump pardoned all of them. The common thread is obvious. If you committed crimes for Trump, you get protected. That is not how the pardon power is supposed to work. And using it that way is an abuse that the Constitution does not tolerate. Point number 2. This sets a terrifying precedent for the future. Think about what message these pardons send to everyone who might be tempted to break the law on behalf of a president. The message is, go ahead, do whatever the president wants, break any law, commit any crime, and if you get caught, the president will pardon you. You will face no consequences. There is no risk. This creates an incentive structure for lawlessness. It tells people that loyalty to the president matters more than following the law. It tells people that the president can effectively authorize crimes by promising pardons to anyone who commits them on his behalf. That is incredibly dangerous. And it does not just apply to Trump. Once this precedent is set, once it becomes accepted that presidents can pardon their allies for crimes committed to benefit them, every future president will have that tool available. Every future president will know that they can encourage illegal conduct and then just pardon their way out of any accountability. The guardrails that are supposed to keep presidents within the bounds of the law will be gone, and we will have taken a giant step toward the kind of authoritarian government the founders were trying to prevent. Point number 3, the founders specifically warned about this exact scenario. I mentioned this earlier, but it is worth emphasizing. The people who wrote the Constitution debated this. They knew that giving the president pardon power was risky. They knew that a corrupt president might use it to protect allies who committed crimes on his behalf. George Mason warned about it explicitly. He said the president might pardon crimes which were advised by himself. Other founders shared his concerns. They debated whether to limit the pardon power or require Senate approval for certain pardons. In the end, they decided to trust that presidents would use the power responsibly and that impeachment would be available as a remedy if they did not. Well, here we are. A president is using the pardon power exactly the way the founders feared. He is pardoning crimes that were committed to benefit him. He is protecting allies who attacked democracy on his behalf. And the remedy the founders provided was impeachment. That is why the current impeachment push is so important. It is not just about holding Trump accountable. It is about vindicating what the founders believed, that when a president abuses the pardon power this way, there has to be a constitutional response. Point number 4, doing nothing normalizes this abuse for all time. This is really the key point. If Congress does nothing, if lawmakers just shrug and accept what Trump has done, then this becomes the new normal. Future presidents will know that they can pardon their co-conspirators without consequence. Future presidents will know that they can use clemency to obstruct justice and cover up crimes. The precedent will be set, the norm will be destroyed, and there will be no going back. That is why it matters so much that Congress acts, even if the chances of actually removing Trump are slim, even if the Senate would never convict. The process of impeachment itself sends a message. It puts on the record that this conduct is unacceptable. It creates a historical marker that says, we recognize this was wrong even if we could not stop it. And it might, just might, give future Congresses the foundation they need to take stronger action if another president tries the same thing. Doing nothing is not neutral. Doing nothing is an endorsement. Doing nothing tells every future president that abusing the pardon power is fine. Point number 5, the public outrage is real, and it is growing. Over 500,000 Americans have signed petitions demanding impeachment specifically because of Trump's pardon abuses. Advocacy groups are organizing, legal scholars are speaking out. There is a genuine movement of people who believe that what Trump has done crosses a line that cannot be ignored, and that public pressure matters. Lawmakers respond to their constituents. When enough people demand action, politicians have to pay attention. The question is whether that pressure will be sustained, whether people will keep demanding accountability even when it seems like nothing is happening. Whether the outrage will translate into actual political consequences for lawmakers who refuse to act, that is up to us. That is up to everyone who cares about the Constitution and the rule of law. The impeachment articles are there. The legal arguments are clear. The evidence is overwhelming. What we need now is the political will to actually do something about it. Here's the bottom line. Trump has used the pardon power to protect nearly 1,600 January 6 defendants and his closest allies who tried to overturn the 2020 election. He has turned clemency into a cover-up. He has created a system where crimes committed for Trump result in immunity. He has done exactly what the founders warned about when they debated whether to give presidents this power. And now Congress faces a choice. They can act, they can impeach, they can put on the record that this abuse of power is unacceptable, or they can do nothing and normalize this conduct for every future president who might be tempted to follow Trump's example. The stakes could not be higher. This is not just about Trump. This is about whether the pardon power will forever be a tool for presidential self-dealing. This is about whether there are any limits on what a president can do. This is about the future of American democracy itself. The founders gave us impeachment as the remedy for exactly this situation: a president who abuses his power, a president who uses his authority for corrupt purposes, a president who protects his allies from accountability for crimes committed on his behalf. That is what impeachment is for, and that is why the current push to hold Trump accountable matters so much. Even if removal is unlikely, even if the Senate would never convict, the act of impeachment itself is important. It sends a message. It creates a record. It vindicates the constitutional principles that the founders believed in. And it might, just might, help preserve those principles for future generations. All right, that is what I have got for you today. This story is still developing and the impeachment push is gaining momentum. Make sure you are subscribed and you have notifications turned on, because there is going to be a lot more to cover as this unfolds. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think about Trump's pardon spree. Do you think it rises to the level of an impeachable offense? Do you think Congress will actually do anything about it? I want to hear from you, and I will see you in the next one.